Now we're going to get into that Halloween theory, okay? And some of you might have seen this already on Killer Flicks. And it caught, you know, because remember the last theory that I talked about wasn't really a theory, but I was talking about, like, it was a what if. Like, what if Myers didn't know that Lori went to the hospital, Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. And that story could have went in a completely different direction, you know? So we kind of broke that apart, delved into it a little bit. And then before that, we talked about how Annie, there was a theory that Annie was the main target in the first Halloween. So it originated from one of the comments on Jason from Sinister Cinema Reviews. And he talked about it, and it got a lot of buzz in the horror community, and we all started talking about it, and I talked about it on my stream, and it was an interesting thing to discuss. But all these things, they work because, or they're debatable because of just how open, open air, open spacey. That makes no sense whatsoever. How Kevin Spacey the first movie is, okay? There's just a lot of room to play with in the first movie. So let's go over. Let's read it. It's gonna be interesting. Get ready, guys. Okay, get ready. We're gonna read this together for the first time. All right, here we go. And news. All right. Theory. I just read that line, that theory, and I was like, oh my, I gotta talk about this. Michael Myers isn't the original killer in Halloween. Think about that. Michael Myers isn't the original killer in Halloween. Wow. Somebody wrote an article breaking this apart. So we're going to read this article, okay? This is interesting. Let's poke some holes. All right, here we go. All right, and let me see. This is from Thought Catalog, which is it could be just a hub for people to post articles on. I don't know. But this is by Chrissy Stockton. Chrissy Stockton just wrote this recently. Holy shit. She wrote this. She updated it today. Okay, so here we go. Chrissy Stockton. We're gonna read this. I like when people start thinking outside the box and thinking, hey, what if this or what if that, you know? Okay, here we go. Theory. Michael Myers is dead. No, Michael Myers isn't the original killer in Halloween. I know. There is no horror canon like Halloween canon. This little boogeyman movie John Carpenter and Deborah Hill made for $300,000 is something horror fans are very protective about. Oh my God, yes. I grew up with Michael Myers too. I mean, no disrespect to the franchise, but I've been thinking about something lately that just doesn't make sense. Hear me out. Let me take a drink. I'm getting ready for this, okay? I'm gonna savor this. I'm gonna savor it. 104 of you are about to hear a new theory that Michael Myers isn't the killer, or wasn't the original killer in the first movie. Okay, here we go. In the original Halloween, we see 6-year-old Michael Myers in 1963 when he murders his older sister. Michael is sent to Smith's Grove Sanitarium, and then we flash forward to 1978 when he escapes and returns to Haddonfield and starts killing people. We see nothing of Michael's time in the sanitarium until Rob Zombie's remakes. We are just told that a 6-year-old child is evil, could not be helped, and the only solution is to lock him up for life. That doesn't add up for me and makes me suspicious of the person pushing this narrative, Dr. Samuel Loomis. Okay, all right, go on. So far, I'm not completely on board with this theory. Because everything kind of makes sense as far as like the child, he escaped and Loomis had to go after him. Okay, so I'm going to read on though. Anyway, I'm thinking out loud. Think about it. Why is Dr. Loomis so obsessed with Michael Myers? Shouldn't an elderly psychiatrist have better things to do than chase a predator around town? Surely the police should be the ones doing this while Dr. Loomis can help in some other way that is perhaps less physically demanding and more suited to a man of his age and skill. But what if there's another reason Dr. Loomis freaks out whenever Michael gets out? What if he's worried he might get exposed? Interesting. I think it holds weight for the movie just because Loomis is definitely kind of obsessed with Myers because it's like this nut that he couldn't crack, because he's a psychiatrist. And so he wanted to figure out what was it that made this 6-year-old child completely snap. So I can, for 15 years, and he got nowhere. So I can see him freaking out when he escapes. Okay, so let's read on. We know basically nothing about the Myers family. We're never told when Michael and Dr. Loomis meet. We just assume it's at Smith's Grove Sanitarium. It's entirely possible that they met before that. What if Michael had behavioral problems and his parents had him seeing the doctor prior to the events of Halloween? Or what if Judith was seeing Dr. Loomis and he preyed on her? She was 15 when she died, meaning Dr. Loomis could have lost his whole career. Oh, wow. That's a wild theory. I'm sure John Carpenter probably reads some of these and is like, wow, where is this coming from? This is hinted at by the origin of the character's name. Sam Loomis is the lover of Janet Leigh's character in Psycho. Yeah, that's another theory, that the Sam Loomis is Loomis from Psycho, which is an interesting one to break apart as well. Once we establish that motive for Dr. Loomis, there's all sorts of horror movie ways he could be manipulated, Michael, to murder his sister. It's a trained psychiatrist versus a 6-year-old. It's really not that far-fetched. If Dr. Loomis was seeing both Myers' children, he could have groomed Michael into murdering for him and then covered up the previous sessions. Wow, this is far out there. The Myers parents would want to grieve quietly in private. They wouldn't be processing missing dates on medical records or Dr. Loomis speaking in a vague way to the police and media. Or perhaps Dr. Loomis was only seeing Michael and he decided he'd like to have 24/7 access to his favorite victim, so he orchestrated the events of Halloween 1963. And if this is the way it happened, I wouldn't hold a 6-year-old child to be responsible for actions he was manipulated into a skilled adult. I would consider Dr. Loomis the true killer of Judith Myers. Let me stop right there for a second. Oh, Jesus, this is crazy. And let me see what you guys' thoughts are so far. This is a little insane. and I wonder if Chrissy, is she a diehard Halloween fan? And maybe that's what you would have. I mean, if you're watching this movie for, just as a casual fan, or like for even the first time, how you would even jump to that conclusion, that type of theory? No. But like I could, in a million years, I could never think, like, Dr. Loomis is definitely a little twisted in the head. But throughout the franchise, there's never been any kind of inclination that he was a pedophile, or there was just no hint of it whatsoever. Now, I will say, Don Shanks literally said that when Myers falls on top of him at the end of 5, remember when he's beating him with the 2x4, I think? Loomis was in character, and a lot of times character actors, they'll come up with their own story in their head, even if it's not like portrayed on screen. And he said, he whispered in Don Shanks' ear, I get it now. I abused you as a child, or something like that, which is, like, I'm wondering if Chrissy actually saw that and maybe tied that into this, because that is interesting. Out of all, like, I really enjoyed the Annie theory, that there's a lot of weight to that theory. You could see some breadcrumbs, I guess, in that theory, but this one really just has no breadcrumbs, I guess. I don't know. Let's read on, okay? I'm thinking out loud again. Now, we've all seen Michael Myers go on a killing spree or two with our own eyes. We know that he becomes a murder machine eventually. You have to remember, this is after Dr. Loomis had constant access to Michael Myers for 15 years. An adult can break down a child during 15 years. It's entirely possible Michael's hulking frame is a direct response to the abuse inflicted on him by Dr. Loomis. Tired of being victimized, he could have focused on bulking up in lockdown. When Michael breaks out, he is older and bigger, free for the first time in his life. He hates what the world has made him become. Where does he go to take out his anger? Haddonfield, the home of the family that refused to protect him. So she's basically saying that he's still Michael Myers. So in this article, it made it seem like it was a different killer. Let me go back up and read the title again, because I'm kind of confused here. Michael Myers isn't the original killer in Halloween. It seems perfectly reasonable to think that Michael snapped after the trauma Dr. Loomis inflicted on him. It's either this theory or believing that a 6-year-old is just evil and his family never noticed until he all of a sudden murdered his sister with a butcher knife. I personally find this theory more believable than both the 6-year-old is evil theory and other canon events like Michael faking his death at the end of H2O. Yeah, they should have never had that at the end of H2O. It should have just been Myers. While researching this theory, I discovered I'm not even the first person to think there is more to Dr. Loomis than we've been led to believe. It turns out another horror fan also thought something was up with the good doctor. The blogger wrote, "Is it possible, just possible, mind you, that Dr. Sam Loomis is either flat out lying or greatly oversimplifying the facts? There's a crucial scene in the film in which Loomis describes his relationship with Michael Myers to the very skeptical Sheriff Lee Brackett, a man whose own daughter, Annie, will be among Michael's victims. Here is what Dr. Loomis says while he and the sheriff are investigating Michael's now abandoned childhood home. I met this 15-year-old... I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left, no conscience, no reason, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old boy with a blank, cold, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him and then another 7 trying to keep him locked away when I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil." Michael was 6 when he committed the original murder of his sister. That means Loomis must have gotten to him very soon after the child became a ward of the state. We just saw for ourselves what Michael looked like when he was at this age. Does that image match up with Loomis's speech at all? Personally, what I saw was a terrified, very confused little boy who was appalled at his own actions. You could definitely, I could agree with that. His facial expression, like if we go back up to the top here, yeah, I mean, if you go by Will Sandon's acting there, yeah, he does look concerned. In Scream 3, noted horror movie scholar Randy Meeks tells us that as horror movie franchises go on, the movies become about going back to the original and rediscovering something that wasn't true from the get-go. As the Halloween franchise continues, what are we going to discover about 1978's original Halloween that we thought was true but actually isn't? I think Michael's origin story is more sinister than we have been led to believe. Okay, I think if we were to go down that road, and I'll get that super chat here in just a sec, Kyle. If we were to go down that road, then you would destroy the franchise. Okay, and you can kind of compare this to what they did at the end of the Nightmare remake, which they should have never done that. You can tell some of the backstory of the killer, but you don't want to give too much away, and you especially don't want to. You especially don't want to be absolute. You know, you don't want to draw a line somewhere that could alienate half, if not all, of your audience. And making Freddy, you know, knowing that he's a pedophile, drawing that line was a really bad move. And thankfully, this wasn't the first movie in the franchise. You know, people were able to look past it because it was the remake. If this was the first movie, though, can you imagine that? If at the end of Nightmare on Elm Street, you find out that he actually is a pedophile, it might have went a different way. Now, doing this at this point, when there's been nothing to point to that direction, that Dr. Loomis was, you know, that type of person, and not just a pedophile, but, you know, it's also saying that he's trying to cover up. You know, Loomis is really a really bad man, according to this article. That that really hurts it because everybody loves, like, Dr. Loomis is one of the most beloved characters in the Halloween franchise. So to take somebody like that and then make him pretty much a monster, pretty much even worse than Myers himself, yeah, that'd go over like a fart in church. Okay, that would not go over well at all. Yeah, Loomis killed Judith. But it's just interesting that somebody could actually go that far with a theory, you know, because that's a very pointed theory. How do you get there, you know? Even as open spaced as the first movie is, to make that leap, to go that taboo. Wow, it's interesting. It's very interesting. I had no idea where this story was going to go. I was very curious about, okay, is Michael's not the killer? Then who's the killer? And it wasn't that type of article at all. They were still saying that Myers was the killer, but there's more to the backstory, and Loomis was the cause of his actions. I don't know. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. But yeah, what did you guys think of that article? It didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, okay?